Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gridiron 2024. Ron Poniewasz, Larry Kelly. We are your Gridiron team, your award-winning Gridiron team. Larry Kelly is a member of the Luxembourg, Arbit, Kelly & George law firm. He's assistant baseball coach at Penn State Shenango, the former varsity baseball coach at Shenango, and the former ninth grade basketball coach at Newcastle. He's currently a volunteer for Newcastle. We won't say in what respect. Last week we called him a water boy, but we'll give him credit this week. We'll say he's a volunteer coach.
I'm back. I told Coach Melendo, I'm a game coach. Don't expect me showing up at a lot of practices. I'm a game coach. That's all. That's like the guy that used to be the head coach of the Penguins. He was, whose name escapes me, one of the greatest hockey coaches of all time. Who am I thinking of, Ronnie?
Badger Bob Johnson?
No, not Bob Johnson. The guy he's won more Stanley Cups than anybody. Anyway, they wouldn't let him come to practice. They just said he was a game coach. Well, that's me. I'm a game coach. And I got my Newcastle gear on today. Actually went down and watched the Pitt Panthers practice. Their hoop team getting ready to start their season. Saw a couple drills that I thought was very interesting and shared them with Coach Melendo. So hoop season will be starting soon, Ronnie. It's right around the corner, buddy.
It is right around the corner, and we have a few segments to talk about here. We have our Athlete of the Week, a young man that had quite a performance in a key game last week, and then we'll move it forward for our talking points and a couple of things to talk about on there, and then our schedule. This is week 10. This is the last week of the regular season, and right now we have Athlete of the Week, and it is Chase Mitcheltree, Wilmington High sophomore, 5'10", 175 pound running back safety. And last week for the Greyhounds, Chase Mitcheltree had 20 carries for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns on runs of 7, 27, and 12 yards in a 34-17 win over Sharpsville. He scored the final 2 touchdowns of the game, Larry, and the score at the time was 21-17. So those were key touchdowns.
It's one thing to do it, but it's another thing to do it when the chips are down. And Chase Mitcheltree, he's got good bloodlines now, Ronnie. He's got good bloodlines. I think TD is his father, and I know Bob Mitcheltree is his grandfather. So those are good bloodlines. And he's had it wasn't just an outstanding game. The young man's had an outstanding season. He missed a couple games with a foot injury, but since he's been back, the Greyhounds have been a different team. And big-time players make big-time plays in big games, and that's Chase Mitcheltree. Good bloodlines, great athlete, and he's the real deal.
Yeah, while we're talking about Chase Mitcheltree, and you mentioned the bloodlines, we are running a feature on Chase Mitcheltree and his grandfather, Bob Mitcheltree. That'll be later this week, possibly in the Thursday edition, maybe the Wednesday edition. We don't know yet. It depends on how things shake out with coverage of playoff volleyball, soccer, things like that. So, but we are working on it. We will have that for everybody in a coming edition of the Newcastle News.
Just to interject here, that Mitcheltree name has been prevalent in Wilmington at Wilmington High School for 50 years. 50 years. Bob played. He coached, his son played, and now his grandson's playing. They ought to name the field after him. Should be called Mitcheltree Field.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of supporters to say, yeah, Larry, I don't have a lot of good ideas, but I think that's one of them.
Yeah, and you could support it with that performance that Chase had on Friday night. He played like he owned the field, that's for sure. Went up and down the field against a good Sharpsville team. And here's the thing, Larry. Wilmington is 4-1 in District 10, Region 1, 1A, 2A. And as we all know, that District 10 splits their regions, some of them with a hodgepodge, for lack of a better way of saying it. That's a 6-team region. 3 1A schools. Wilmington is one of those 3. And there's 3 2A schools, and Sharpsville is one of those 3 2A schools. And this week, Wilmington is idle, so they're done playing in the regular season. They're awaiting their postseason fate. But it's very interesting because you get a conference championship for Farrell because Farrell finished 5-0 in region. However, I'm not sure how coaches or high schools or even the district would look at it, but Wilmington is 4-1. They're the top 1A school. So would you not agree that, even though they're not the overall region champ, at least you could lay claim to the fact that you're the Class A region champion?
No, certainly. Farrell's a 2A school, if I understand you correctly. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, there's no real explanation for why you wouldn't name them the Class 1A champ when they had the best 1A record and along the way beat a bunch of 2A teams. But, Wilmington, well coached. Every year they get better as the year goes on. And Chase Mitcheltree, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns, in probably the biggest game of the year. I mean, you can argue that Farrell was a bigger game, but Farrell's a 2A opponent, even though Sharpsville's the same. This was a must-win for Wilmington. And, Chase Mitcheltree had his big boy pants on. 184 yards, 3 touchdowns. Certainly worthy of Athlete of the Week. You got it right again, Ronnie. You're on a streak, brother. You're on a streak. 5 in a row. You not only can pick professional and college football games, but you're doing a pretty good job of picking Athlete of the Week. Good work. I'll tip my hat.
We need to wear one first. So we'll get you one.
All right.
But in addition to that, Larry, wing T is what they run. The wing T offense is what Wilmington operates out of. And this isn't something new. They've operated out of the wing T for how many years? It goes back way, way long ago. And the best part about this Wilmington team is, Larry, Chase Mitcheltree is a sophomore. So you're going to have him 2 more years. You're going to have Jamie Miller, another kid that operates out of that wing T and carries the ball. They only have 2 seniors on the team. Aiden Gardner is one, and he has missed some time with an injury. And Brandon Fillion told me last week he's getting close. Whether he played Friday night, I don't know. And Evan Richardson, I think, is the other kid's name. I hope I pronounce it right, first and last name, or hope I got it right. But that's all they have is 2 seniors. So obviously Chase Mitcheltree is back. Wesley Vaskell, the quarterback, is back. Jamie Miller will be back next year. This team's going to cause problems, not only this year, but beyond.
Yeah, and I want to know who's on that offensive line, because I'm sure Chase would be the first one to tell you that when you run for 184 yards, the guys up front are doing their job. I always said, you get the right guys blocking, Ronnie, you and I can run the ball. But I saw one of the touchdowns. Somebody sent it to me that Chase had. Nice little dip inside and then go to the outside. And the young man's got some speed to burn. Nobody could catch him. In the wing T offense in high school, very, very effective. I've seen a lot of high school teams win a lot of games running the wing T. It reminds me of the line from Remember the Titans when Coach Boone said, I only have 6 plays out of the veer, the option. It's like Novocaine. The more you run it, the more effective it gets. So it's like the wing T. Listen, it's hard to defend at the high school level.
Yeah, it is. Hard to defend at any level, actually. You talk to anybody that coaches college football, and it's tough when you're a college coach and you're going from an air raid attack, maybe like when you were playing Washington State or Mississippi State, I believe, any of those coaches, any of those years that Mike Leach coached, and he was an air raid coach. And then the next week you're playing Army, Navy, or Air Force, it's just, it's a culture shock.
And Georgia Tech used to run, the option, and they used to make people nuts, and they were very good at it. And Wilmington, they've been running his wing T for years, and they normally run up 250 yards a game running it. And I was just looking at the box scores from last week. Every team that led the rushing yardage last week won the game. Mm-hmm. Every team that outrushed its opponent won the game last week. And I still say in high school football, you've got to be able to run the ball. The teams that can run the ball, they win. And that's what happened last week. And when you got a a stud that can run for $184 and 3 touchdowns. He must have a pretty good offensive line, and he's making guys miss. And worthy of Athlete of the Week, Chase Mitcheltree. I can't wait to read your story on Thursday. There's good bloodlines in that Mitcheltree family. And the grandfather, Bob's one of my favorite people. He's beloved in Lawrence County. He's one of those guys who actually, I know you might find this hard to believe, but he actually thought Larry Kelly was a pretty good coach. So listen, that's all I need. That's all I need. I need Coach Mitcheltree to say I'm okay. And listen, that's all I need to hear.
That'll be one of the questions we got to ask Coach Mitcheltree. Was it a big enough check that Larry Kelly cut you for a comment like that?
My man, I don't know. We competed against each other when we were kids and in North County League. And I always tell this story. I was pretty much of a wise guy. And, I just really was a little bit cocky, out there. But when I played against Coach Mitcheltree, and he was a little older than me, he was a catcher for Volant. And the first time I would come to the plate, and I was normally the first batter in the game, I would just look at him and say, "How you doing tonight, Mr. Mitcheltree?" And that's all I said to him. I wasn't going to be a wise guy with him because something bad could have happened to me, and I wasn't taking that chance.
Yeah. When I spoke with Brandon Fillion last week, he definitely mentioned the offensive line and the job that they have done all season long. So I'm sure Chase Mitcheltree would second that, notion of how strong the offensive line is and how it's been playing. And as I mentioned, this team is going to be a problem for teams in the playoffs. They have a bye week this week because their game against Karnes City was canceled. Karnes City canceled this game because they had a game earlier in the season, if you remember that night where virtually everybody got their game shut. Thunderstorms. So they're making up their game against St. Mary's, and that creates a bye week for Wilmington. I know it's a bad analogy, but the rich get richer, so to speak. With Wilmington, they're going to get healthy. They're already a good team. They're going to be tough when the playoffs start.
Another week of practice, another week of letting the bumps and bruises that you accumulate during the season heal up will only work to your benefit. So.
Yep,
congratulations, Chase, and congratulations, Wilmington, and good luck in the playoffs. Of course, they don't need me wishing them good luck. They have the pedigree. They know how to get it done.
Yeah, we will be seeing Wilmington in the District 10 championship game. There's no doubt about that. But that's still weeks down the road. What's coming up next is our talking points, and we let Larry Kelly do what he does best, and that's talk about the Newcastle High football program. And this time it's the football program. Week 1 into week 10, and we'll do that next right here on Gridiron.
There's one thing I learned growing up around here. People should look out for each other, be friends and neighbors that you can count on. So it bothers me when people who are hurt in automobile accidents get bullied by the insurance company. I don't let bullies run over my clients. I do what I was taught growing up. Step up, stand up, and speak up for those who can't. I'm Larry Kelly, and I'm a Newcastle guy.
We're back with you here, everybody, on Gridiron. This is our Talking Points segment, and it'll be the Red Hurricane Minute, where we say, Larry Kelly, the floor is yours.
Yeah, disappointing loss for Newcastle. It was a home game. It was a game I think they were expecting to win, and they didn't. And as a result, if I understood you correctly, their playoff hopes are probably dashed at this point. Even though they're not mathematically out of it, it would be very difficult now to earn a playoff spot, even with a win over Blackhawk this week. But again, it comes down to, I've always was a big believer in high school football. You have to be able to run the ball, and you have to be able to stop the run. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, every team that outrushed its opponent won last week. And Ambridge rushed the ball for 235 yards. Newcastle won 26. They doubled them up, and Ambridge won. Elwood ran the ball last week for 278. Union 65, and Elwood won. If you look at the Laurel Southside Beaver game, Laurel 192, Southside Beaver 119. Laurel won. Fort Cherry 243. Shenango -5. That That game ended up being 42-0 in Fort Cherry's favor. In Wilmington, ran it for 425 yards, Sharpsville 185, and they won. And so, I think Newcastle, when they look back at this year in retrospect, they're going to say, we made progress. And they made a lot of progress. And the program's moving in the right direction. There's no question about that. Skill players, we have them. Kyrell Harris, Nate McKnight, Kayvon Gardner. These young men, they can get it done. But you need the guys up front. You need the guys on the offensive line creating time for the quarterback to throw and opening holes for the running back. And you need the same guys on the defensive line to be able to control the gaps and stop the run. And I think that's where the Hurricane will need to get better between this year and next year if they're going to be a serious contender in the Parkway Conference, which is undoubtedly the toughest conference in that classification. And I understand Montour beat Aliquippa. Went for 2 at the end of the game, converted it, and beat them by 1 point. Maybe it's the first game Aliquippa lost in, somebody said 27 games or something like that. So you're playing Aliquippa, you're playing Montour, you're playing West A. You got to be able to control the line of scrimmage to win those games. And believe me, if it can be done, Coach Mo and his staff will get it done. And, Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't create a culture in a year, but the process is started. And, I want to take a look at Newcastle 3 years from now. When Coach Mo's in his 3rd year, that's when we'll really see the fruits of his labor as kids get stronger, as they become more committed to the program, and as you build and develop a culture of sustained winning in big games.
Yeah. I'm not sure about Aliquippa and their first loss in X amount of games. Were you referring to their first loss in conference action?
Conference play. Yeah, that's what somebody told me. First loss in 27 conference games. But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that's who we're playing. We're playing Aliquippa, we're playing Montour, we're playing West A. Those guys are tough. And again, it's going to take time. It doesn't change in a year, even though we made great progress. And next year, I believe we'll make more progress, but it still may not be enough. By the time guys who are sophomores on this team are seniors, I think that's when we'll know how far this program can go.
The interesting thing about it is when you mention you want to see the fruits of their labor in 3 years, you don't really have to think very long. And there might be a good comparison here, again, 3 years down the road. Elwood City, Newcastle.
Correct.
Both teams are dealing with lengthy losing streaks. Both teams brought in a new coach, Dan Bradley. There you go. They're playing this week for an undefeated overall record going into the playoffs and an outright conference championship. They have a share of one. Newcastle coming off a couple lean years, minimal wins, 1 year or 1 win apiece in each of Stacey Robinson's years at the helm. Bring in Fred Mazzacco. To me, I see the comparisons, but again, we'll know more in 3 years.
And it's a culture. Again, I'm looking. Newcastle had 9 penalties. Mm-hmm. No team whose box score was listed in the Newcastle News on Saturday had 9 penalties. Newcastle had the most penalties of any team that played. I know Coach Mo emphasizes that, but it's a mindset. It takes time, to make these changes. And, that's another thing you got to be able to do. You can't create free opportunities for the opponent. I shouldn't say that. Elwood City, I guess, had 10 penalties, so they had 1 more than Newcastle. But it's too many. If it's a close game like Newcastle was in, you can't give up free yards. And again, I'm not a football coach. I never was. But I'm like an analytical guy. When I coached baseball, I was big on analytics. I wanted to play chess while everybody else was playing checkers. And, as a basketball coach, same way. We're analytical people. Coach Belundo's big on analytics, on the shots we should be taking. The first thing we look at after every game, how many more possessions did we have than the other team? How many turnovers did we have and how many takeaways did we have? Because if we can get more possessions than the other teams, when you add up our turnovers and their takeaways, we normally win. One of the things you're going to look at in every football game is how many penalties did we have? How many yards did we rush for? How many yards did we give up rushing? Those are the type of analytics that when you look at them game in and game out, if you come out on the winning end of that, you're going to win the game more times than not. And that's what the Red Hurricane, at least in my view, needs to work on. But that program's in good hands. Listen, the guys that are coaching there have seen the movie before. They know how to win, and it's going to take some time.
Yeah, they have a lot of talent on that football team. That's for sure. And Fred has done an incredible job. 4-4 overall. There's a lot to play for this week for Newcastle. Playing for pride, you're playing for an above 500 record, and Blackhawk is doing the same thing. They're playing for a 500 record as they've already played 9 games, and that's a rivalry game. There's a lot at stake here, and who knows? Maybe Blackhawk still has a shot to get in. They're 1-3 in league and 4-5 overall, and we'll talk a little bit more about this a couple spots down, but in this talking point segment. But yeah, Newcastle has done well this year, going from 1 win to 4 win and maybe 5 wins. Who knows? Quite a job by those kids.
I feel they've won 4 times more games than they won last year. And again, if you look at the games they've won, they've controlled the line of scrimmage. There's nothing more important in a football game, in my view, than controlling the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. And that takes time. That just doesn't happen overnight. There's nothing more important than offensive and defensive linemen in any football game. The Steelers last night, they ran the ball for, Najee had over 100 yards. Jalen Warren had another 40 or 50. They ran the ball for 150 yards. That's because the guys on the offensive line were moving people. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully if the schedule is the way we think it'll be, being that they played that tried to run the gauntlet at Aliquippa, at Montour, at West Allegheny this year, if the schedule is the way we think it'll be next year, all 3 of those games will not only be at home, they'll be right in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, those are the big boys in the conference. And, before Aliquippa was moved into Newcastle's conference, Coach Mo didn't have to play him, but he purposely went out of his way to schedule him because he said that's the litmus test. They're the gold standard. And that's who we want to be. And I love guys like that. I love guys that aren't afraid of a challenge. And, look, I'm a Hurricane. I'm a Red Hurricane through and through. I believe in Coach Mo and his staff. And I believe that 2 years from now, we're going to be looking at a different program and a different team because they're on their way up and they're going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Staying with our talking points, we're going to move on to the next topic. Neshannock and Laurel are playing for the outright Big 7 championship this weekend, this Friday night. Neshannock, I think probably at the midway part of the season, you might have penciled in, would have some say in the conference title, but when Laurel started out 0-4, I don't know that a whole lot of people would have been in their corner to win a conference title. I mean, remember, I said they were going to win at least 3 in a row, and then we'll talk about things when they go into Southside, and they got the job done Friday night at Southside, and here you are, Neshannock at Laurel. It's a county rivalry. There's a conference championship on the line, and like Brian Cooper has said, what more could you ask for?
Listen, it's an old Tri-County game, and there's rivalries. I can tell you, coaching at Chenango High School baseball, those old Tri-County rivalries, they run deep. And I can tell you that Laurel and Neshannock, it'll be a packed house. And this should be a great game, Ronnie. It really, really should. And Laurel's playing its best football. I believe Neshannock has played great all year. I mean, they basically had a scrimmage against Summit Academy, beat them 47-6 last week. But They both teams have playmakers. Both teams can run the football. Neshannock may be a little better through the air. That's not Laurel's shtick. They don't throw it a lot. But, man, can they run the ball. And they beat a really good Southside Beaver team, 27-13. And as I recall, Neshannock, it was a one-score game at Southside Beaver, was it not, last week? And Neshannock kind of hung on for victory there. So two evenly matched teams. It's going to be a great game. It'll be a great game.
Neshannock was down in that game. I want to say it was 19-13 late, and they went ahead and won the game 21-19. And last week, Laurel owned the game the whole way through. They were up 21-0 at the half. They were looking really strong, and they didn't have too many offensive plays, Laurel, in the third quarter. I think Brian Cooper told me 3 all of the third quarter. But remember, Southside Beaver has an offense similar to Wilmington. They run the wing T. They're very good at it. And really, when you have a team like Southside or even Wilmington, anybody like that runs the wing T, make them play from behind, get up to a couple touchdowns, because, I really don't know that the forward pass or the passing game is something that would put a lot of fear into you. So that's why you have to play with the lead, and Laurel did that. Not just one score, they were up 3 scores at halftime.
Yeah, no, that's a good football team. It's going to be a great game. And I'll make a prediction. The team that runs the ball better is going to win the game. The team that controls the line of scrimmage is going to win the game. Both teams run it well. And, both teams defend pretty well. So, and again, you got to avoid turnovers and special team gaffes. I see that Dom Cabela's ran another punt back or a kickoff or a punt. No, it was a punt back for a touchdown. You can't give up special team touchdowns. And, Neshannock, a couple times this year, have picked off passes and taken them back to the house. You got to avoid those kind of mistakes. And, if you do, both sides, you can't allow that to happen. You got to make the other team earn it. Should be a good game. This should be a great football game. Old Tri-County rivalry.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had the ability to look into the future and you knew in the future who would win this game, if you were to tell me Laurel's going to win, I would not be surprised. If you said Neshannock is going to win, I would not be surprised. But if you told me whoever wins is going to win by 11 points or more, I would be shocked. I think this game is a nail biter right down to the end, and I think it's going to be a great football game, and it's going to be very close.
Probably a one-score game. Where's the game being played at?
At Neshannock.
Okay. They play on artificial turf out there, which probably gives them the edge, because Laurel does not, as I recall. Their field's still natural grass. So maybe gives Neshannock the edge. If you're used to playing on that stuff, it's a little different. But this would be a great football game. Old Tri-County rivalry. I love it.
Hey, you never know. We might get this matchup somewhere down the road in another couple weeks. You never know.
Well, if you remember, Neshannock, their first playoff game last year was against Beaver Falls, a team that they had beaten in the regular season, played them in the first playoff game and got beaten. And Beaver Falls ended up being the Whippeal champ in that classification.
Yeah. And here, I thought you were going to go in this direction, but since you didn't, I will. This could be like Laurel Union from a couple years ago. They met in a regular season, and then being that they're 2 county teams, and then they could meet in another couple weeks in the playoffs.
Yeah, that would be fun. There's nothing better than, when I played sports, not so much in college, because you really don't know the guys you're playing against. But when I played in high school, I didn't mind losing to I did. I hated losing to anybody. But if I lost to Ambridge or if I lost to maybe Beaver Falls, that wasn't nearly as bad as if I lost to Neshannock or Laurel, because I would see those guys at McDonald's, or, we would be playing in the summer against each other. It's a little different losing to your neighbors. You don't ever want to do that, because you got to see them. You got to see them at McDonald's. You got to see them in the summertime playing hoops at the swimming pool. Now, you want bragging rights. You certainly do.
Yeah. Okay, and the last talking point topic that we're going to mention is, being that we're on the verge of the playoffs, the pairings will be released Saturday, which is a lot different than it was years ago. If you remember, we'd have to go down to Green Tree and, there'd be a 1,001 people in a 50 person type storage place, a place that would house about 50 people. There'd be 1,001 people there. You know what it's like for basketball is similar for football.
Oh, that was always a lot of fun. That was a fun night, though. We'd go down and collect our section championship trophy. We'd go out and have something to eat. It was always a lot of fun. But yeah, it's different today. Yeah, I get it.
It's different today. They're released on Saturday. Here's the playoff format, Larry, and you tell me what you like. Do you like the format where you have two teams from the conference, which is champion and second place, and then potentially two wild cards from anywhere across the classification? Or do you prefer determined playoff teams with the example, your top three or top four? And if you slot in somewhere, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're going to the playoffs. You're not putting it in the hands of sitting around the table saying, well, this team looks pretty good. I don't know. Maybe this team looks better.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd have to ask myself, why are they doing it that way? The Parkway Conference, which is the absolute toughest conference, used to take 4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth place team in the Parkway Conference probably could beat the champion of many other conferences very handily because, again, you're playing against Aliquippa, Montour, and those schools. There must have been somewhere along the line somebody saying, hey, look, the third place team from this conference, is not as good as the fourth place team from this conference. And so therefore, we're not going to give an automatic bid to that third place team. And maybe, again, that bodes well for a conference like the Parkway Conference, where how many teams they take in 2?
In 2A, it is, oh boy, I don't have it exactly.
No, Parkway's 4A, isn't it?
Parkway's 4A, yeah. I thought you said 2A.
No, I think they're only taking 2 teams, right?
They're taking the top 2 teams from the 3 conferences and then 2 wild cards in 4A.
Yeah, so my point is, you're going to leave West A out, who maybe only lost to Aliquippa and Montour, and take another team from another conference. I don't know. There has to be some reason. I'd have to see how it's played out through the years before I could really weigh in on what I like better.
Yeah, and you have like these 2 games. We'll dive into it a lot more in our schedule part. But New Brighton at Union, I think the winner holds some semblance of hope for a wild card, but you have no idea. Let's say Union wins that game. They're leaving the stadium that night saying, hey, we did our job. We did our part. We have a shot. Now it's, let's wake up on Saturday and, hope we get dealt an ace and a king or something. And
Ronnie, I grew up in an era where only the first place team went to the playoffs. Only the first place team. Mm-hmm. And I can remember several Newcastle basketball teams that finished second to Farrell and never even got a chance to compete in the playoffs. My senior year in baseball at Newcastle, if we win the last game, we could tie for the section lead. We lose it. We end up in third place. We never even had a chance to go to the playoffs, and we could have won it all. We were that good, So, I mean, we've come a long way from only one team going. And the fact that they now do allow some wild cards and give other people opportunity. Beaver Falls, where did they finish last year in that conference? 3rd, maybe? And they won it all. I know they finished behind the Shannock and was Mohawk in that conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they never even had a chance in my era, and they won it all. So, I don't know that there's any right or wrong way, but here's what I would tell my players. You want to make sure you're in? Finish first.
Right. Yeah.
That's how simple this is. Finish first, and then we don't have to worry about anybody, giving us a pass. Let's win them all.
So it seems like we're in agreement on picking top 3 or 4, and it's so we know where we stand, whether we're members of the coaching staff, players, fan base, media, what have you, rather than wild cards. Yes.
Yes. My point is, or maybe take the top 2. Let's, again, you take the top 2 last year. Beaver Falls doesn't get a chance, and they don't get a chance to win it all. I don't. I don't know. I don't know how we do this. Or maybe we do it like Ohio, where they let everybody in, right? District 10, don't they let everybody in?
Yes, yeah, and unless you opt out. So obviously, I got to imagine Kennedy Catholic will opt out, being that they're over the season and having a hard time fielding enough players to compete.
Right.
So
yeah, I don't know. It's not easy, and there's no right answer. But listen, if you want to be a champion, then go win, and don't cry if you don't win enough games to finish first or second. Like I said, in my year, only the first place team win.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that is our talking points segment. We will tell you about the schedule, what's on the docket for our county teams. We'll do that next in our final segment, right here on Gridiron.
I became an attorney because I believe in hard work, fairness, and human decency. In a word, justice. Our workers' compensation clients deserve justice because in an instant, their hard work turns into hard times when they get hurt on the job. No doubt, life is tough, but so am I. I've been fighting all my life, and I'll keep fighting for you. I'm Joe George, and here in Lawrence County, it's personal.
Back with you to close up shop here on this week's edition of Gridiron, and it's our schedule portion. We have, I believe it is 6 games to talk about. They're all Friday night, 7 p.m. Wilmington is idle, as we mentioned in a previous segment, being that Karnes City canceled that game so they could play St. Mary's in their season finale. As of right now, I don't believe Wilmington is going to fill that void. But in any event, let's start off with Blackhawk, 1-3 in Parkway, 4-5 overall at Newcastle, 0-4 in Parkway, 4-4 overall. This game at Taggart Stadium.
I mean, I hope the Red Hurricane win. I hope they win, even if they don't make the playoffs. For Kyrell, for Kayvon, for Nate, for my man Marcos Diaz. I had all of those guys when they played basketball. They're great kids. I want to see them go out a winner, man. I'm sure it's senior night, and I'd love to see the Red Hurricane come back with a W and finish the season strong. They deserve it.
Yeah, a win would put a feather in their cap in many different ways. You'd go from 1-9, I believe, last year to 5-4. You'd be over 500. You'd actually, being right now they're 0-4 in conference. At least you get a conference win. You can play in that conference. Gives you a wealth of confidence going into the offseason. So much to build on. And you're beating Blackhawk, which, as Newcastle will tell you, that's a rival.
Historically, it's been, right. Blackhawk's been in our conference forever. So I'll be rooting for the Red Hurricane on Friday night.
I covered that game last year at Taggart Stadium when Blackhawk trailed by a few points. It was less than a touchdown, and Blackhawk seemingly had little to no hope, and they went right down the field and scored a touchdown with minimal time left and maybe 5 seconds left.
I remember that. I remember that game. Yeah, that was a tough one. Yes, it was.
So, hey, if Ambridge can channel it and say, well, they beat us last year, that was their only game, and Ambridge comes back and beats Newcastle to avenge that game last year, I think Newcastle can do the same. I think they can remember that and say, let's not have that same thought going into the off season.
It's a big game for Newcastle. It's a big game for the program, probably more so than Blackhawk. This is a big game. This is one they want to win. They want to go out with a winning record, and I think they will.
Yeah, Coach Mazzocco will definitely have this team ready to play on Friday night. That's guaranteed. Next up, we have Beaver Falls 0-6, 0-9 overall at Elwood City, 6-0, 8-0. This is a Midwestern Athletic Conference matchup. Larry Kelly, if you're sitting here with a bingo card in front of you, or multiple bingo cards, if you like to play more than one at a time, I don't think either one of them would have Beaver Falls with a winless mark, either in conference or overall, and same with Elwood City, undefeated in conference, undefeated overall.
No. From an historical perspective, if you looked at the paper, you'd have said, Poniewasz made a mistake. He got these records backwards. Beaver Falls is 7-0 and Elwood's 0-7, but those days are long gone. How the mighty have fallen. Beaver Falls was the Whippeal champ last year. And Elwood City, listen, Coach Bradley, wow, what a job he's done with that team. And man, are they good and are they on a roll? And they'll take care of business on Friday. They're going to get a high seed in these playoffs, and I'll be excited to watch what they do moving forward.
Yeah. Beaver Falls leads the all-time series, 67, 24, and 5 ties. The last Elwood City win came back in 2017, which was 28-zip. I think Elwood City gets a 25th win in the all-time series, and certainly cancels that last win over Beaver Falls from 2017. I think they get a win.
These teams have been playing each other a long time. They're both from the old Midwestern Athletic Conference that used to be right up and down Route 18. Sharon, Farrell, Newcastle, Elwood City, Beaver Falls, Ambridge, Aliquippa, and Butler. That was a great conference.
Yeah. Let's go next to Riverside, 4-2 in Midwestern Athletic Conference action, 5-4 overall at Mohawk. Also 4-2 in conference, 5-3 overall. Larry, this one here, the winner clinches third place and a playoff spot. The loser, as we talked about it in a previous segment regarding the playoff situation, the loser is fourth place and alive for a wild card, basically getting out the rosary and everything else that you can to pray to the higher power that you get in.
And listen, this Riverside team has come a long way. They struggled last year, and they gave Elwood City everything they could handle last week. Now, the game's at Mohawk. Mohawk better put their big boy pants on, because this is going to be a good game. This is going to be a good game. I still think Mohawk is the favorite. They're playing at home. But Riverside, these guys are tough down here. They bring it. And they almost upset Elwood City last week, and that was no fluke.
Yeah, you definitely can't get behind Riverside, because they love to run the ball, and they're happy to keep running it. And you fall behind against Riverside, the clock becomes your issue, because minimal possessions also.
And they got a really big time running back down there who weighs about 230, who is a little bit like Najee Harris. He's carrying guys for 4 or 5 yards after you hit them. And so Mohawk better be ready to play.
This is one of those games, kind of like I mentioned previously with Laurel Neshannock. If you told me Riverside was going to win, I probably wouldn't be too surprised. If you told me Mohawk was going to win, I probably wouldn't be too surprised. This is about as even gets.
I'd say the team that runs the ball better wins the game next week. And I know Mohawk likes to throw it, but if they allow Riverside to rush the ball for 250 yards, they're going to control the clock. They're going to control the time of possession. It's going to be tough. So this is a great game. It'll be a good football game, good high school game.
Last year, Riverside won all of one game. So there's something going on special down in Elwood City, and it's not just at Lincoln High School, it's at Riverside. There's a lot of good football being played down in that confined little area.
My 4 daughters went to Riverside High School. I can tell you these guys down here are tough. These are tough kids down here. So, it's a small school, though. I mean, year in and year out, they may not have the same success because the years they're playing with young guys. Again, I've always said freshmen and sophomores don't beat juniors and seniors in high school. But as these young guys mature, get more experience, they know how to play down here at Riverside.
Yeah, and they've had junior high success too. And you've always wondered, when's that going to translate into varsity success? Well, it is now.
Yeah.
You're in the playoff mix. That's for sure.
Having coached at the junior high level, I always say there's not much difference in a player in his toughness, in his ability, in his skill set between ninth grade and varsity action. Now, the body changes and the experience changes, but the guys that are tough, athletic, and skillful in ninth grade normally carry that forward when they get to the varsity team.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Laurel, 5-0 in the Big 7, 5-4 overall at Neshannock, which is 5-0 conference, 8-1 overall. Laurel has won each of its last 5 games after losing its 4 non-conference games. Neshannock is on a 6-game winning streak, and their lone loss was against Elwood City Lincoln, and that was only by a touchdown. They were in that game. It was 28-14, and then Neshannock tacked one on and made it 28-21. So it was anybody's ball game in the one that they did lose.
Again, Laurel is 5-0 in the conference and 5-4 overall. They could easily also be 8-1 because I think 3 of those 4 losses were one possession games. So this is a good football team, and as I said earlier, it's a old Tri-County rivalry. It's going to be a great night at Neshannock High School on Friday night.
Yeah, Laurel's losses in non-conference action: 14-7 in overtime to Elwood City, 9-7 to Riverside, missing 2 field goals in the fourth quarter, including one on the last play of the game, and losing to Mohawk 32-27. So really, depending on how things play out, the 3 of those losses could have come to playoff teams in a classification above you.
Yeah. Oh, no, this is a good football team, and we said that. We said that early on. One possession game, it could be one play here, one call there, a tip pass that doesn't go your way that could change the outcome of the game. So, no, Laurel's a good football team, 2 evenly matched teams, and that'll be a ticket worth buying Friday night to watch that one.
The committee is going to have a difficult decision coming up, Larry, on Saturday. It's going to be made a little more difficult if Neshannock wins this game, because let's have this discussion, Larry. We're on the staff, and we've just mentioned that Laurel is second place in the conference. But how do you handle them with a seed, knowing that you could have beaten a team like Elwood, which is undefeated and a MAC champion? You could have defeated Riverside, which might go to the playoffs. You could have defeated Mohawk. This is a good football team and deserving of a really strong seed, whether they are a conference champ or second place.
Yeah, if they lose and finish second place, they're going to get a lower seed. They're just going to, because of their overall record. However, they're not going to. I don't know how many teams are in that conference, but they're not going to be a 14, 13, 12 seed. They're going to be middle of the pack. If there's 16 teams, they're going to be an 8, 9. That's my guess. I don't know how many teams are actually going to be in that bracket, but Laurel will be in the middle of the pack because their losses have come to playoff teams and teams that are a larger classification in one-score games.
Mm-hmm. For Pride, we have Summit Academy 0-5 in Big 7 play, 1-7 overall at Shenango, which is 1-4 in the conference, 1-6 overall. This is again 7 p.m. Shenango's lost 5 in a row after that 25-20 road win against Northgate. It's been a really rough season for Shenango for a lot of reasons. Lost out on 2 games, one for the passing of Jimmy Graham's son, and another game because of foul weather conditions. So they have 2 less games than some teams do.
It'll be senior night. The game's at Shenango. Sammy Patton played for me, one of the toughest guys I've ever coached. He's the senior quarterback on that team. I'll be rooting for Wildcats, and I think they'll take care of Summit Academy. It'll be a nice way for them to go out. Again, it's been a tough season for Shenango for many reasons. Not the win-loss record in a football season pales in comparison to the loss that they had to start the year of Coach Graham's son, DJ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So a win here against Summit Academy will be a nice way to go into the off season and pick up some steam and carry that into 2025. And lastly, we have New Brighton, which is 2-4 in the Midwestern Athletic Conference, 2-4 in conference, 4-5 overall at Union, which is also 2-4 in conference, but 2-6 overall. The winner takes 5th place and has a shot at a wild card spot. The loser, wakes up Saturday morning knowing that their season is over.
Yeah, I mean, a 5th place finish in that conference, I don't know if that's going to be enough to get into the playoffs. But it's the last game. It's probably senior night for Union. They're evenly matched teams. My prediction, again, is if the team that runs the ball the best and controls the line of scrimmage is going to win the game. They're 2 evenly matched teams. And, I don't care if there's a playoff berth on the line. I used to play in pickup basketball games on the playground and didn't want to lose. So I'm sure that's how these young men feel. Doesn't matter. When you put the uniform on and you're squaring up against your opponent, you don't want to lose. I guess that's a bad habit I always had. When they were keeping score, I wanted to win, and
Yeah.
that'll be the case at Union Township on Friday night.
I have to think though, if you're Union, you have to take it little bit by little bit. First off, they're playing up in classification. They're in 2A. They're in the Midwestern Athletic Conference, and if you were to say to Coach Needballa, hey, your last game of the season, you still have something to play for. Okay, they'll take that. They were competitive this year. Things to build on. They had a 2-game winning streak here until Elwood City got a hold of them last week. I would have to think at some point that playing up in classification in 2A, they've made strides this year, and it'll be all about building for the future. This game.
No, again, you always have something to play for, and it's called pride. Mm-hmm. I told you, I don't care where I was playing or what game I was playing in. I didn't want to lose, and I don't care what the record is. You want to win. If they're keeping score, you want to win. And I'm sure that's how Union feels. And, those young men know what it's like to win Whitfield championships. And Coach Needballa knows what it's like. And I'm sure if you ask him, he wants to win. He wants to go out on the right note. It's a lot easier to be in that weight room lifting weights in January and February when you win that last game than when you lose that last game. So, there was a book that was written about Vince Lombardi, and it was called When Pride Still Mattered. And I think pride still matters at Union High School.
Absolutely. Okay, Larry, that is the capper on our schedule. What would you like to say as we finish up here on what is the Week 10 podcast?
Hey, listen, I commend all these players. To go through a varsity season, a football season, it takes a lot of commitment. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And win or lose, it builds character, because sometimes in life, after you lose, it's hard to get up the next day and go do it again. And that's what these young men have done. And, they've put in the time, they've worked hard, they've committed, they spent themselves in a worthy cause. They've developed relationships that will last a lifetime. There's a lot to be said about that. And along the way, hopefully they've learned some life lessons that when they cross that bridge from adolescence to adulthood, those lessons will allow them to be successful. That's what I was all about when I was a coach. My job was to mentor young men, teach them life lessons. And if I won a few games along the way, that was just icing on the cake.
High school football is a very demanding and physical sport. May or may not be for everybody. But the kids that have come out for the team and they've stuck it out this long and for the season, it doesn't matter if you're on an 8-0 team or a team that's has their season-long struggles. We tip our cap to you and congratulate you and wish you all the best and have a safe game on Friday, October 25th. And for those teams that have clinched a playoff berth, we'll see you in the postseason. And hopefully the teams that are still battling for a playoff spot, we hope that you'll join them as well. He's Larry Kelly. I'm Ron Poniewasz. We'll be back here next week to tell you all about the playoffs, and we'll do that right here on Gridiron. We'll see you next week, everybody.
They goaded me. I got hoodwinked. We were 2-2. Just got beat 18-8 by Marsh. And I told those guys, you can't wear earrings at practice. Why? Coach, everybody has an earring. No, everybody doesn't have an earring. I don't have one. Coach, you'd look good in an earring. There's no shot I'm getting an earring. Coach, if we win the Whitfield championship, will you get an earring? No, we're 2-2 and we just got beat 20-8 or something like that. I said, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll get an earring. Now take yours out. And then we won 21 games in a row, and yours truly got an earring.